38 German soldiers stumble off a transport truck, hollow-eyed and starving, bracing for the torture they'd been promised by Nazi propaganda. Instead, they're led into a mess hall. What happens next will shatter everything they believe about America and about the war itself. Medical records don't lie. Letters home tell the truth, their captors won't. And for thousands of Axis POWs held in American prison camps during World War II, the most devastating weapon they'll face isn't a rifle or a bomb. May 14th, 1943. Camp Forrest, Tennessee. The transport truck lurches to a stop, and Obergefreiter Klaus Becker feels his stomach clench, not from hunger, but from fear. Through the canvas flap, he catches his first glimpse of American soil. Rolling green hills, impossibly lush under a spring sun that seems too bright, too warm. Behind him, 37 other German soldiers sit in silence. Their gray uniforms stained with North African sand, their faces hollow from the weeks since their capture at Tunis. Klaus runs his tongue over cracked lips and tries to remember the last real meal he had. Was it in Sicily? Before the supplies stopped coming? Before everything fell apart? The Wehrmacht propaganda films had been clear. America was a nation of soft industrialists and mongrel races, incapable of sustaining a real war effort. Their factories would crumble, their people would starve. And their prisoners? Klaus had heard the whispers in the holding camp in Algeria. The Americans would work them to death. Revenge for the U-boats. Revenge for France. Revenge for everything. Rouse! Rouse! An American MP shouts, but his tone lacks the viciousness Klaus expects. The soldier, a corporal with a round face and a Midwestern accent Klaus doesn't recognize, gestures with his rifle, but the barrel points skyward, not at them. Klaus exchanges a glance with Feldwebel Hermann Vogel, who'd been his squad leader before the surrender. Hermann's eyes ask the same question they've all been asking: what happens now? They climb down from the truck onto gravel that crunches beneath their worn boots. The air smells different here, humid, green, alive, not like the desiccated wasteland of Tunisia's last days, where even the wind tasted of defeat. Klaus notices details despite his exhaustion. The neatly painted barracks arranged in orderly rows, the guard towers that seem almost decorative in the afternoon light, the absence of barbed wire scars on the ground. This doesn't look like the photographs of Soviet camps the propaganda ministry had shown them. This doesn't look like punishment. An American officer approaches, a lieutenant with a clipboard and an expression more bureaucratic than hostile. He addresses them in German, accented, awkward, but comprehensible. You will be processed. You will be assigned barracks. You will follow camp regulations. You will be treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention. The words mean little to Klaus. The Geneva Convention is something diplomats discuss. Real war is about survival. They're led into a processing building where the smell hits Klaus first: food. Real food. Not the ersatz coffee and sawdust bread of the final weeks in Africa. Not the thin soup and moldy potatoes that had sustained them since Stalingrad changed everything. This is the smell of meat cooking, of bread baking. Klaus's stomach growls so loudly that Hermann hears it and laughs, a short, bitter sound that holds no humor. They fatten us before the slaughter, Hermann mutters in Klaus's ear, like Christmas geese. But the processing continues with mundane efficiency. Names recorded, personal effects cataloged, medical examinations conducted by an army doctor who checks Klaus's weight with the same dispassion he might show a farm animal. 132 pounds, the translator relays. The doctor frowns, makes a notation. Klaus doesn't understand why. He's always been thin. Aren't they all thin now? Then comes the moment that will fracture everything Klaus thought he knew about America. They're marched to a mess hall. The Americans call it that, mess, which seems appropriate for soldiers, and the doors open onto a scene Klaus's mind initially refuses to process. Long tables, benches, trays, and food. Mountains of it. A serving line where American cooks, actual cooks, not starving men rationing crusts, stand ready with ladles and spoons. Klaus sees potatoes, real potatoes, glistening with butter. Meat that isn't horse meat or worse. Bread that's white and soft. Vegetables and colors he'd forgotten existed. Is this? Herman starts, but doesn't finish. None of them finish their sentences. They stand in the doorway. 38 scarecrow men in threadbare uniforms, staring at abundance they'd been told didn't exist. An MP gestures them forward. Come on, get your chow. You've got 15 minutes. Klaus moves like a man in a dream. He picks up a tray, metal, heavy, real, and shuffles through the line. The first cook, a Negro soldier with massive forearms, spoons mashed potatoes onto Klaus's tray without comment. The second adds a slab of roasted pork that must be 6 ounces. 6 ounces. Klaus has eaten that much meat in the last month. The third cook adds green beans swimming in butter. The fourth offers bread rolls. The fifth, Klaus stops counting. His hands shake as he carries the tray to a table. He sits. He looks at the food. He looks at Herman, who's already eating with single-minded intensity, tears streaming down his gaunt face. Klaus picks up a fork. The metal feels heavy. He cuts a piece of pork and brings it to his mouth. The taste explodes across his tongue with such intensity he gasps. It's not just sustenance. It's flavor, richness, fat and salt, and everything his body has been screaming for through months of deprivation. He chews slowly, almost reverently, and then he cannot stop. He eats like a man possessed, shoveling food into his mouth, barely pausing to breathe. Around him, his comrades do the same. The mess hall fills with the sounds of eating, desperate, furious eating, and the occasional sob from men whose bodies have forgotten what real nourishment feels like. When Klaus's tray is empty, he sits back, stunned. His stomach is full. Actually full. Not just no longer empty, but full. The sensation is so foreign, he feels dizzy. An MP walks past the table, and Klaus's military training overrides his shock. Excuse me, he says in broken English. This food. This is for mistake. The MP looks confused, then laughs. Mistake? No, soldier. That's chow. You'll get 3 squares a day. Same as us. He walks on, leaving Klaus staring after him. 3 meals. Daily. Like this. Herman leans across the table, his voice low and urgent. Klaus, the propaganda, everything they told us, about America being weak, unable to feed its own people. It was all lies. We don't know that, Klaus whispers back. This could be special. To show the Red Cross inspectors. To what? Herman's eyes are hard. Look around. Look at this place. These guards aren't starving. These buildings aren't falling apart. This is a nation on the brink of collapse. Klaus wants to argue, but the food in his belly makes it difficult to marshal his thoughts. His body, suddenly nourished, wants only to sleep. They're led back to the barracks, long wooden structures with rows of cots, each with a mattress, a pillow, actual sheets. Klaus collapses onto his assigned bed and loses consciousness before he can process what's happening to him. Over the following weeks, Klaus discovers that the first meal wasn't an aberration. It wasn't propaganda for Red Cross inspectors. It was simply how American POW camps operated. Breakfast arrives at 0600 hours. Scrambled eggs or oatmeal, toast with butter, coffee with real sugar, sometimes bacon or sausage. The first time Klaus sees bacon, crispy strips of actual pork fat, he thinks of his mother in Hamburg rationing out their monthly meat allowance across 30 days. He thinks of his sister Elizabeth writing that they've started eating tulip bulbs. He thinks of these things and eats the bacon anyway because his body gives him no choice. Lunch is sandwiches or soup with bread. Dinner is the heavy meal. Meat, potatoes, vegetables, sometimes dessert. Dessert. Klaus hadn't eaten dessert since before the war. The first time an American cook serves him apple pie, Klaus stares at it for a full minute. Herman, sitting across from him, picks up his own slice and takes a bite, his eyes close. Mein Gott, he whispers. I'd forgotten what sugar tastes like. The routine is bewildering. They wake. They eat. They work. Light maintenance around the camp. Nothing that could be considered war production. Everything in compliance with Geneva Convention articles they'd never believed anyone actually followed. They eat again. They have recreation time, volleyball courts, a library with German books, even music. They eat once more. They sleep. And slowly, impossibly, they begin to change. Klaus notices it first in his uniform. The trousers that hung loose on his frame 3 weeks ago now strain at the waist. He mentions this to Hermann during their work detail, repainting Baroque walls under the supervision of a bored MP reading a magazine. "I've gained weight," Klaus says, as if confessing a crime. Hermann pauses mid-brushstroke. "So have I. My tunic buttons are tight." He sounds almost frightened. "Klaus, what are they doing to us?" "They're feeding us," Klaus replies, but even he hears the absurdity in stating the obvious. That evening, Klaus volunteers for sick call, not because he's ill, but because he needs to know. The camp doctor, Captain Morrison, is a thin man with gentle hands and wire-rimmed spectacles. He speaks no German, so an Austrian prisoner named Stefan translates. "I would like to know my weight," Klaus says. Captain Morrison raises an eyebrow, but gestures to the scale. Klaus steps up. The weights slide. The doctor makes a notation. 153 pounds, Stefan translates. "You've gained 21 pounds since arrival." 21 pounds. In 5 weeks. Klaus's mind reels. Is this normal? The doctor's response, filtered through Stefan's translation, is matter of fact. Very normal. Most prisoners arrive malnourished. The daily caloric intake here is 4,000 calories, which is sufficient for recovery and maintenance of healthy body weight. Some men gain more in the first months. Your weight gain will stabilize as you approach normal body mass. 4,000 calories. Klaus knows enough about nutrition, from Wehrmacht training, to understand what that means. 4,000 calories is what they'd given assault troops before major offensives. It's what athletes ate. It's more than German civilians were receiving. More than soldiers on the Eastern Front had seen in 2 years. "Captain," Klaus asks through Stefan, "how much do American civilians eat in their ration books?" The doctor considers the question. Rationing varies, but most civilians average around 3,000 calories daily. Some items are restricted: meat, butter, sugar, but basic nutrition remains adequate. He pauses. "Why do you ask?" Klaus doesn't answer. Can't answer, because the question forming in his mind is too dangerous. If American civilians eat 3,000 calories while fighting a two-front war, while feeding millions of soldiers overseas, while supplying Britain and the Soviet Union, while also feeding German prisoners 4,000 calories, what does that say about American industrial capacity? What does it say about everything he'd been taught about American weakness? That night, Klaus lies in his bunk and stares at the wooden ceiling. Around him, 37 other men sleep, some snoring, some mumbling in dreams. They all look different now. Faces filling out, skin regaining color, bodies remembering what health feels like. Gefreiter Otto Zimmermann, who'd arrived so emaciated that his teeth seemed too large for his face, now looks merely thin. Unteroffizier Paul Schneider's perpetual cough, the wet, rattling sound that had kept him awake in the transit camp, has disappeared. Even Hermann, who joked bitterly about their fattening before slaughter, moves with energy Klaus hasn't seen since before Africa Corps collapsed. But Klaus finds no comfort in his improving health. Instead, he feels a creeping dread that has nothing to do with captivity and everything to do with comprehension. They'd been told America was weak. They'd been told America couldn't sustain a war effort. They'd been shown films of breadlines from the Depression, told that nothing had fundamentally changed. They'd been promised that the mongrel nation would collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. And they'd believed it. Klaus had believed it, because it had to be true. Because if it wasn't true, then what were they fighting for? If America could feed its people, its soldiers, and its prisoners while simultaneously outproducing Germany's industrial base, then the war was already lost, had always been lost, would never have been won. The thought is intolerable. Klaus pushes it away and tries to sleep. July 3rd, 1943. Camp Forrest, Tennessee. The American Independence Day celebration catches the prisoners by surprise. Klaus and his barracks mates wake to the smell of grilling meat, more intense than usual, and discover that the camp is preparing for a holiday feast. The Americans, it seems, celebrate their rebellion against the British crown with food. Klaus has been in the camp for 7 weeks now. His weight, checked 3 days ago at sick call, stands at 160 pounds. He's gained 28 pounds since arrival. His face, when he catches his reflection in the latrine mirror, looks like a stranger's. The sharp angles have softened. The grayish tint of malnutrition has faded. He looks, Klaus realizes with discomfort, healthy. He looks fed. The Independence Day meal is extraordinary, even by the camp's absurd standards. There's grilled beef, steaks, actual steaks, and chicken. There are baked beans and potato salad and coleslaw. There's watermelon, cold and impossibly sweet. And there's ice cream. Vanilla ice cream served in bowls, 2 scoops per prisoner, as if frozen dessert during wartime is the most natural thing in the world. Klaus sits at his table with Hermann and Otto and Paul, all of them staring at their ice cream like it might be a hallucination. I haven't had ice cream since 1938, Otto says quietly. My daughter's birthday party. Before everything. My wife wrote last month. Paul adds, his voice distant. She said they're eating potato peels, boiling them for soup. She asked if I could send food home. He laughs, a hollow sound. I wrote back that I couldn't, but I didn't tell her why. How could I tell her that I'm eating ice cream in an enemy prison camp while she starves? Hermann doesn't eat his ice cream. He just watches it melt, vanilla cream pooling in the bowl. This is a weapon, he says finally. Klaus looks up. What? This? Hermann gestures at the food, the camp, everything. This is a weapon. Don't you see? They're not feeding us out of kindness. They're feeding us to break us, to make us complicit. Every meal we eat is proof that everything we fought for was based on lies. You're being paranoid, Otto says, but his voice lacks conviction. Am I? Hermann's eyes are feverish now. Think about it. They show us American abundance. They prove German propaganda was false. They make us fat and comfortable while our families starve. And then what? They send us home after the war because we all know Germany is losing now. Don't pretend otherwise. And we go home fat, well-fed, healthy, walking proof that America was never the weak nation we were told to despise. Every returned prisoner becomes a living contradiction to everything the party claimed. The table falls silent. Klaus's ice cream is melting too now, but he's lost his appetite. Because Hermann is right. Klaus can feel it. The cognitive dissonance growing in his mind like a tumor. He'd been a loyal soldier, not a fanatic. He'd never joined a party, had avoided the Hitler Youth recruiters when he could, but loyal. He believed in defending Germany. He believed in the rightness of his cause, or at least the necessity of it. But how can that belief survive 3 meals a day? How can it survive gaining 30 pounds while his mother rations bread? How can it survive ice cream on Independence Day? There was a letter today, Klaus says quietly, from my sister Elizabeth. She's 16. She wrote that she's been assigned to factory work, 12-hour shifts making ammunition. She said the workers get a bowl of soup for lunch, cabbage and water mostly, sometimes a potato if they're lucky. He looks at his melting ice cream, then at Hermann. She asked me to pray for her, to pray that Germany wins quickly so the hardship can end. Klaus's voice breaks. She thinks I'm suffering. She thinks I'm being tortured. She's praying for me while I eat steak and ice cream. Paul pushes his bowl away. I can't eat this. You will eat it, Hermann says flatly. Because we're prisoners and we have no choice. Because our bodies need it even if our consciences don't. Because refusing to eat won't help Elizabeth or anyone else in Germany. He picks up a spoon, looks at the melted ice cream, and then deliberately eats it. All of it. His face is expressionless. There, he says. I'm complicit. We're all complicit. The moment we started accepting American food, we became complicit in our own re-education. Klaus eats his ice cream too. It tastes like ashes, like defeat, like the truth. Over the summer, the pattern continues. The prisoners eat. They work. They gain weight. They receive mail from home that describes increasing deprivation, while they themselves experience increasing comfort. The contradiction becomes unbearable. Klaus learns from other prisoners that the experience is universal across American POW camps. At Camp Concordia in Kansas, Italian prisoners are growing tomatoes in gardens and eating pasta with red sauce. At Camp Trinidad in Colorado, German captives are smoking American cigarettes and drinking beer brewed on site. At Camp Aliceville in Alabama, prisoners have organized a camp orchestra and perform concerts while eating meals that exceed what most Europeans have seen since the Depression. The medical records tell the story more clearly than any propaganda could. The average prisoner gains 15 to 20 pounds in the first 3 months. Some gain more. Oberleutnant Friedrich Weber, a Luftwaffe pilot shot down over Tunisia, gains 35 pounds in 2 months and requires a new uniform. His transformation is photographed by American military intelligence before and after, and Klaus knows these photographs will be used for something, though he doesn't know what. What he does know is that his own transformation is equally dramatic. By September, Klaus weighs 173 pounds. He's gained 41 pounds since arrival. He catches his reflection in windows and doesn't recognize himself. The man staring back is filled out, healthy, almost prosperous. He looks like a man who's never known hunger. It's obscene. The letters from home grow worse. Elizabeth writes that their mother has collapsed twice from malnutrition. Their food rations have been cut again. The factory workers get even less now. The war effort demands it. She doesn't say which war effort she means, Germany's or America's. But Klaus knows. Everyone knows. The Germans are being starved to feed a war machine that's running on fumes, while America feeds its prisoners better than Germany feeds its citizens. In October, the camp receives a Red Cross inspection. Klaus and 50 other prisoners are interviewed about their treatment. The questions are perfunctory: adequate food, adequate shelter, adequate medical care. And the answers are universally affirmative. Because what else can they say? That yes, they're being treated well. That yes, they're eating 4,000 calories daily. That yes, they've gained weight while their families starve. The Red Cross inspector, a Swiss national named Bachmann, seems satisfied. He makes notations on his clipboard and moves on to the next prisoner. But as he passes Klaus, he pauses. "You're healthy," he observes. "You've been well fed." "Yes, sir." Klaus responds in German. "Your family, in Germany, are they well fed?" Klaus meets the inspector's eyes. He sees pity there, and understanding. "No, sir," Klaus says quietly. "They're not." Herr Bachmann nods slowly. "I see." He makes another notation and moves on. Klaus doesn't know what he's written, but he suspects it's not about food quantities or camp conditions. It's about something more fundamental. Something about winning and losing. About truth and propaganda. About what happens when reality contradicts everything you've been taught to believe. That night, Klaus writes to Elizabeth. He tries to tell her he's being treated well without giving details. He tries to express hope for her health without revealing that his own health has never been better. He tries to bridge the impossible gap between her reality and his. He fails. He tears up the letter and writes a new one that says nothing important, nothing true. He signs it, "Your loving brother, Klaus," and hands it to the camp male officer knowing it's a lie. He's not her loving brother. He's a well-fed prisoner whose comfort is purchased with her suffering. December 25th, 1943. Camp Forrest, Tennessee. Christmas in captivity. Klaus hadn't expected it to mean anything. But the Americans, it seems, take Christmas seriously. The mess hall is decorated with pine branches and paper chains made by prisoners in the craft workshop. There's a tree, a real Christmas tree, in the corner, strung with popcorn and cranberries. The irony isn't lost on Klaus. They're decorating with food. Because they can. Because there's so much food that it can be used for decoration. The Christmas meal is elaborate. Roasted turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes with gravy, candied yams, green beans, cranberry sauce, rolls, and pumpkin pie. Klaus has gained 48 pounds since May. He weighs 180 pounds now, 20 pounds more than he weighed before being deployed to North Africa. He's not just recovered from malnutrition. He's exceeded his pre-war body weight. He sits with Herman and Otto and Paul, the same men he's eaten with for 7 months, and they consume their Christmas feast in silence. Around them, other prisoners eat with varying degrees of enthusiasm or guilt. Some have embraced their situation, accepted the cognitive dissonance, chosen to survive without thinking too deeply. Others, like Herman, eat with grim determination, as if each bite is an act of betrayal they must consciously commit. Otto has recently received a letter from his wife, his daughter, the one whose birthday party he remembered when first eating ice cream, has died. Pneumonia complicated by malnutrition. She was 8 years old. Otto read the letter aloud to their barracks with a voice like dead leaves. Then he'd folded it carefully, placed it under his pillow, and gone to dinner. He'd eaten everything on his tray. Klaus doesn't know if this makes Otto strong or broken. Perhaps both. I've been thinking about after, Paul says, breaking the silence. He's cutting his turkey with mechanical precision. After the war, after we go home, what do we tell them? The truth, Herman says immediately. Which truth? Paul counters. That we were well fed while they starved? That America was everything the propaganda said it wasn't? That we lived in comfort while Germany burned? He sets down his knife. How do we come home fat and healthy and look them in the eyes? Klaus has thought about this. Late at night, in the quiet hours when sleep won't come, he's imagined his return to Hamburg. Imagined his mother opening the door and seeing him. Well-fed, healthy, obviously cared for. Imagined her touching his face, feeling the flesh on his bones, and understanding that while she rationed potato peels, her son was eating turkey and pie. We tell them that the war was lost before it began. Klaus says quietly. We tell them that Germany never had a chance. That American industrial capacity was so vast, so overwhelming, that they could feed their enemies better than we could feed our own people. We tell them that every piece of propaganda was a lie designed to keep us fighting a war we'd already lost. They won't believe us, Otto says. His voice is flat, empty. Why would they? It sounds insane. Prisoners living better than free men. Enemies eating better than citizens. It contradicts everything that should be true about war and sacrifice and survival. It contradicts everything we were told was true, Herman corrects. But that's the point. That's always been the point. They haven't just captured our bodies. They've captured our beliefs. Every pound we gain is a pound of doubt. Every meal is evidence that we were wrong. About America. About the war. About everything. The conversation dies. They finish their Christmas meal. Klaus eats his pumpkin pie slowly, tasting cinnamon and sugar and the bitter flavor of truth. Around them, American guards celebrate their own Christmas, eating similar meals, singing songs, passing around photographs of families back home. The guards look happy, comfortable, not like men fighting a desperate war, not like men watching their nation crumble under the weight of global conflict. They look like men who know they're winning. After dinner, some prisoners attend a Christmas service organized by a Lutheran pastor from Tennessee who volunteers at the camp. Klaus goes because Elizabeth would want him to, because maintaining some connection to home, to normalcy, seems important even when nothing is normal. The pastor speaks about hope and redemption and forgiveness. He speaks in English, translated haltingly into German by Stefan the Austrian, and Klaus lets the words wash over him without absorbing them. But one phrase catches his attention. The truth shall set you free. Klaus almost laughs. The truth hasn't set him free. The truth has imprisoned him more thoroughly than any barbed wire. The truth that Germany was built on lies, that the war was unwinnable, that American weakness was a fantasy. This truth has locked Klaus in a cage of his own shattered beliefs. He'll leave this camp eventually. The war will end. Everyone knows it now, though no one says it aloud. He'll be repatriated to Germany, to Hamburg, to whatever remains of his home and family. But he'll never be free of what he's learned here. Never be free of the knowledge that he gained 50 pounds while his sister's daughter starved to death. Never be free of the cognitive dissonance between propaganda and reality. Never be free of the ice cream and turkey and abundance that proved everything he'd fought for was predicated on carefully constructed lies. The truth hasn't set Klaus free. It's condemned him to live with understanding he never wanted. March 15th, 1945. Camp Forrest, Tennessee. Nearly 2 years in captivity. Klaus has stopped thinking of it as imprisonment and started thinking of it as exile. An exile from war, from hunger, from the increasingly desperate struggle unfolding across Europe. News reaches the camp sporadically, officially through propaganda-free news bulletins posted by American authorities, unofficially through letters from home that pass through multiple layers of censorship. Germany is collapsing. Everyone knows it. The Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years is dying in its 12th. The Allies have crossed the Rhine. Soviet forces are pushing toward Berlin. The Italian campaign is over. The war in the West is a series of retreating actions and desperate last stands. And still the prisoners in Camp Forrest eat 3 meals a day for 1,000 calories, turkey on Thanksgiving and ham on Easter. Klaus weighs 185 pounds now. He's gained 53 pounds since arriving nearly 2 years ago. He looks, by any objective measure, prosperous, healthy, well-fed. He looks like a man who spent the war in comfort, not combat, which, he supposes, is exactly what he is. He's also learned English. Most of the prisoners have. The camp offers classes taught by American volunteers, and the prisoners attend because what else is there to do? Klaus can now read American newspapers, listen to American radio broadcasts, understand American conversations. This linguistic competency has become another weapon in his cognitive arsenal. He doesn't just see American abundance. He can understand the casual way Americans discuss it. He overhears guards complaining about rationing, about how you can't get all the sugar you want, about how butter is expensive, about how you have to save your ration stamps for special occasions. These complaints, which the guards voice with genuine frustration, would sound like fantasy to anyone in Germany. The American definition of scarcity is German abundance. Their hardship is German prosperity. Their rationing still exceeds Wehrmacht combat rations. This is what victory looks like, Klaus realizes. Not parades and conquests, not flags and anthems. Victory is having so much that you can complain about not having more. Victory is feeding your prisoners better than your enemies feed their citizens. Victory is such overwhelming industrial capacity that 4,000 calories per prisoner barely registers as an expense. In March, the camp receives a new batch of prisoners. These are different from the Afrika Korps veterans who've been here since 1943. These men are captured on the Western Front, pulled from the desperate defense of Germany itself. They arrive skeletal, traumatized, aged beyond their years. Klaus watches them stumble off the transport trucks and sees himself 2 years ago, hollow-eyed, starving, afraid. One prisoner, a boy who can't be more than 18, stares at the camp with undisguised terror. Klaus approaches him during processing, remembering what it felt like to arrive, to expect brutality and receive bureaucracy. "Welcome to Camp Forrest," Klaus says in German. "I'm Obergefreiter Klaus Becker." The boy, Grenadier Hans Muller, looks at Klaus like he's insane. "Welcome," he croaks. His voice is ruined, probably from screaming during artillery barrages. "This is a prison camp." "Yes," Klaus agrees. "It is, but not the kind you're imagining. You'll be fed 3 meals daily, good food, substantial portions. You'll receive medical care, shelter, recreation time. You will be treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention." Hans laughs, a broken sound. "Geneva Convention. Right, and I suppose we'll get chocolate and cigarettes too." "Actually," Klaus says, "yes. The camp store sells both. You can purchase them with tokens earned through work details." Hans stops laughing. He looks at Klaus more carefully, taking in his well-fed appearance, his healthy complexion, his sturdy frame. "You're serious," he whispers. "I'm serious. But we're the enemy. We're Germans. We're..." Hans stops, struggling with something. "We killed American soldiers. We fought their allies. We bombed their friends. Why would they feed us? Klaus has had 2 years to think about this question. Because they can, he says simply. Because their industrial capacity is so vast that feeding prisoners will cost them almost nothing. Because treating us humanely serves their propaganda purposes. Because they follow international law, even when it's inconvenient. Take your pick. Hans is led away for processing, but Klaus sees him later in the mess hall, staring at his first American meal with the same disbelief Klaus had felt 22 months ago. The cycle continues. New prisoners arrive. They're fed. They gain weight. They confront the cognitive dissonance between what they were told about America and what America actually is. Some adapt. Some break. Some, like Klaus, simply exist in a state of permanent displacement. Neither here nor there. Neither believing nor disbelieving. Neither German nor American, but something in between. That evening, Klaus receives a letter from his mother. It's the first communication he's had from her in 4 months, and the delay is explained in the first line. She's been relocated. Hamburg was firebombed. Their apartment building was destroyed. Elizabeth is missing, probably dead. His mother is living with distant relatives in Bavaria, subsisting on whatever the collapsing Nazi state can provide, which is essentially nothing. Klaus reads the letter twice. Then he folds it carefully and places it in his footlocker with all the others. He goes to dinner. He eats his pot roast and vegetables and bread. He gains another pound toward the 60 pounds he'll eventually accumulate. He exists in the space between knowledge and feeling, between guilt and survival, between the war outside and the surreal peace within these barbed wire fences. Hermann finds him after dinner, sitting outside the barracks in the mild Tennessee spring. Bad news from home. Hermann asks, though it's not really a question. All news from home is bad now. Elizabeth is probably dead. Klaus says. Hamburg is gone. My mother is a refugee. Hermann nods slowly. He received similar news about his own family last month. And yet we eat, he says. It's not an accusation, just an observation. And yet we eat. Klaus confirms. They sit in silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink that seem too beautiful for a world at war. Somewhere across the ocean, Germany burns. Cities crumble. People starve. The Reich dies its messy, violent death. And here in Tennessee, German prisoners play volleyball and eat ice cream and gain weight that their bodies will carry like evidence of a crime they didn't commit but can't deny. After the war, Hermann says quietly, they'll send us home to whatever's left, and we'll be the lucky ones, the survivors, the well-fed prisoners who outlasted the war in comfort while Germany bled out. Yes, Klaus agrees. How do we live with that? Klaus doesn't answer, because he doesn't know, because maybe there's no answer, because maybe surviving isn't supposed to be comfortable, because maybe the weight he's gained, every pound, every ounce, is a burden he'll carry for the rest of his life, a physical manifestation of the impossible contradiction between what he was told to believe and what he learned was true. The sunset fades. The stars emerge. Somewhere in the camp, someone is playing a harmonica, a German folk song, melancholy and familiar. Klaus and Hermann sit and listen and wait for a war to end that, for them, has already been lost in ways that have nothing to do with territory or battles or flags. They lost it in the abundance they couldn't refuse, in the meals they couldn't reject, in the weight they couldn't help but gain. They lost it the moment they discovered that their enemy could afford to be generous, and that generosity was the cruelest weapon of all.